Guys, we're back. Make sure your cameras are on. Cameras, please. Children, come on, cameras. Juan, Klonar, Tiana, Ophelia, and Danny. Cameras. Why is it you're kind of like here? No. Oh, you're. Nita, camera on. I mean, the camera is on. You. All right, ready to rock and roll? Thumbs up if you guys are ready. Great. So, cost approach. So the sales comparison approach was looking at comparables in the market. The cost approach is looking at the cost of construction. Right? It's the cost of a construction. But what construction? If we're trying to rebuild something, right, how much would it cost to build it? That's how we estimate the value of certain types of properties. So which properties do we use the cost approach for? The cost approach is used for recently built properties and is used for special purpose buildings. Okay? So the way we look at it is very simple. If I build a house today, and this might be a question in the school or state exam. If I build a house today, brand new, and there's not new constructions in the area, how do you figure out the value of mine? Right? How do we figure out the value? Can I use comparables? Probably not, because there's nothing to compare to. The other properties, they were built 10 years ago, for instance. And they've been sold since, so we can use those as comparables for properties from that time. But something that was recently built has nothing to compare to, right? And this is why the cost approach is more effective when it comes to newer homes. Special purpose buildings, right? We're talking about schools, churches, hospitals. They have this special, unique purpose. And most of the times they don't bring income. Like they're not a rental. They have income as a business maybe, but they don't have a rental income. So it's difficult to figure out the value of the real estate in these types of buildings. So the only way to figure out more or less a value is by looking at how much it would cost to rebuild the property. So remember, special purpose or new homes cost approach. Remember that for school or state exam. Now, the strengths of the cost approach. That it provides an upper limit of the subject's value based on undepreciated cost of reproducing improvements. It is very accurate for a property with new improvements, which are the highest and best use of the property. The limitations, or disadvantage, okay, is the cost to create improvements is not necessarily the same as market value, and depreciation is difficult to measure, especially for older buildings, right? The cost approach generally aims to estimate either the reproduction or the replacement costs. Now, reproduction, it's that precise duplicate. It's doing exactly the same thing that it was 100 years ago, as an example. While replacement is that functional equivalent. It's the aftermarket. So we're not using the OEM or originally equipped for manufacturer, right? Whatever way it was when it was built originally, right? We're using parts that have the same function as the original, right? Parts that have the same function as the original. Like I told you, copper pipes versus PVC. Now, the cornerstone of the cost approach is the concept of depreciation. And depreciation is loss of value and then improvement over time. This is Jen, are you still doing cost approach? I want to know. Yeah, actually, I just started the cost approach. So depreciation is loss of value and improvement over time. Now, the key word, guys, is improvement. And this is key that you know what this is. Who can tell me what is considered an improvement? Making something better. Okay, that's perfect. Got it, love it. But what's an improvement to real estate? So we already know it's making something better. So that was great. That was great. That was a great answer. But to real estate, to land, what is an improvement? Fixing your sidewalk. But Clenar says progress. Juan says something that adds value. And it says to build. Okay. Building, says Rose. Okay. As it says adding a room. Okay. This is why understanding the word improvement is so important. Okay. Let's stop right there. Celine, thank you. Thank you very much. So Celine wrote, adding value to your land. If you guys remember when we talked about land versus real estate, this is land, the surface, right? And then we have below the surface belongs to us, above the surface belongs to us, and then if there's a tree, right, that was nature, that put there, that's land. If there's pockets of water, that was nature, that put there, right? So the definition of what we see right here is definition of land, right? The surface, below, and above. Whatever is naturally put on the or placed on the property is called land. Okay, land. That's it. Where real estate, the definition of real estate is land plus improvements. Okay, and this improvements, we're even talking about the pipes for the water, the pipes for the gas, the fact that you put a driveway there, the fact that now you have a pool, maybe you have a garage, whatever. Anything that's added to the land or that adds value to land, to raw land, is considered an improvement. So technically, anything that's human made, right? Anything that's human made is considered improvement. Okay? So the word improvement, we're not talking about adding a room in the house. We're talking about anything that's added to the land is improvement. Okay? Anything that's added to the land is improvement. So depreciation applies to all improvements. See, these pipes, if you guys look right here, the water pipe, the gas pipe eventually need to be replaced. The roof eventually needs to be replaced. The garage, the shingles, whatever, eventually needs to be replaced. The pool needs to be replaced. Eventually, okay, things die, meaning they lose value. So an improvement loses value over time. Guys, this is a wall. Is this wall going to last forever? Hopefully, but quite honestly, no. Eventually must be replaced. So everything that's installed in the house, anything that's added to the land, loses value over time because maintenance, placement. Okay? You guys go with that? Okay, we're going to repeat depreciation when we get to chapter 18. So I want to make sure you guys are on point with this. Okay, depreciation. Now, since land, right, let me take this out of here. You guys see the text? Since land is assumed to retain its value indefinitely, depreciation only applies to the improved portion of real property. Okay? So depreciation does not apply to land itself because land lasts forever. It applies to anything that's added to the land. Now there's three different types of depreciation. There's the physical depreciation, there's the functional depreciation, and there's economic depreciation because of obsolescence or obstacle, right? Let's call it obstacle so it's be easier to remember. Okay? Now, as far as physical deterioration, what you need to remember is physical deterioration is wear and tear. The floor, we walk on it every day. So eventually it will get damaged. The opening the doors, closing the doors, eventually it will get damaged. That's the wear and tear. The opening of the water, closing the water, that's wear and tear, right? So every time you see physical deterioration, look at the answers in the state exam or school exam. Look at the answers that talk about damage. Okay? Every time you see physical deterioration, look for damage. Now, it might be curable or it might be incurable. So curable means that, hey, like painting, right? This is the example here. Like painting, that's easy to do. It doesn't cost that much, so it's curable. Incurable means that the expense to fix doesn't justify it. So might as well not do it. That's incurable. Functional, okay? If you see functional obsolescence, we're talking about features of the house that are no longer desirable. So I'll give you the example of a property that I have that's about to close. One of my students buying a 4-family. And that 4-family, okay, that 4-family has two bedroom, bath, 2 bath or something like that. 1 bath. And then here, he has 1 bedroom, 1 bath, 1 bedroom, 1 bath. Okay? You're probably thinking, how is that possible? It's a 4-family, most likely was built the same way in the bottom as it was at the top. Well, here's the difference. Here only has 1 living room. Here it has living room and dining room. Okay. Now, listen. These two have living room, dining room. This one has living room and living room, right? How many times, raise your hand, guys, and just for me to confirm something that I've been explaining over time. How many times do you guys actually sit down at the dining room to eat versus kitchen or living room? All right, Sam sits at the dining room, okay? Anybody else? Okay, 1, that's it. Okay, so 3 people, that means barely anybody, all right? No offense, guys, I'm not calling you nobodies, just that statistically, people don't sit in the dining room anymore. So technically, do we need a living room and a dining room once we have a kitchen? No, nowadays our lives are so rushed that usually family, unfortunately, does not sit together, but if they do, right, Rose said barely, but if they do, it's at the kitchen table, or in special events, they actually sit at the dining room table, right? So technically, we could eliminate the dining room because it's no longer functional. All right, so this is functional obsolescence. It's no longer functional. And we can repurpose into a bedroom. So now we just added roughly $1,000 worth of value into this property just by changing one thing. Hey, that's not a dining room, that's a bedroom. Period. Are you guys understand this? Yes? Right? So repurposing something because it's no longer desired, it's no longer functional as is. Okay? So every time you look at functional obsolescence, look at features that could be changed. Features that could be changed about, in the property. And the next one is economic obsolescence. Okay. Economic, it's always talking about something outside of your property. So it's external. External obsolescence. Right? And it could be, and it's most likely incurable. So economic obsolescence, it's something that's outside of your property and it's incurable. Okay? And to give you guys a quick example, I'm right by the train station. I'm right by Route 21. You guys, once in a while, you hear the sirens going through. Sometimes you hear the train going through. Can I change that? Can I move the Route 21? Can I move the train station? I mean, the railroad? Can I move it? No. These are external conditions that affect the value of my property, and it's incurable. I can't do anything. Can I move the building? No. So external obsolescence, it's stuff that you're stuck with and it's not on your property. Not on your property and you're stuck with it. All right? So these are the three different types of depreciation. Wear and tear, functionality, and external issues. So again, this is physical, functional, or economic obsolescence. You got to remember those. And of course, Jen would be one of those persons to say, every day I eat on the dining room. Of course. Still, if we look at the numbers, roughly 10% of you guys actually said you eat the dining room table. Well, not 10%, I'm sorry, 20%. So 80% still within the norm that we consider nowadays the norm. This dining room for what? Yana, you're too funny. Sometimes I don't know if you're clapping for me or for the baby. She's like, yeah, great job. I don't know if it was for me or for the baby. Baby came to visit you? There you go. All right, baby on camera. We charge more for that though. Just a quick reminder. Jen says functional obsolescence. Intercoms. Yep, worthless. They never worked back then, they'll never work today. People in the other rooms never listen, no matter what. So, intercoms, it's definitely a functional obsolescence. All right, so the steps to the cost approach. Ready? The cost approach consists of estimating the value of the land as if it was vacant. Value of the land as if it was vacant. So land is calculated separately. And by the way, out of all the approaches, this is the only one that has this value separate. Okay? The only one that estimates the value separate and then adds at the end. We're going to go over numbers in a second. Now, you estimate the cost of the improvement, so whatever's on the property, the improvements. You estimate and deduct accrued depreciation, adding the estimated land value to the estimated depreciated cost of the improvement. So what do? We estimate the land value separate as if it was vacant with no building on. What is the land worth? Then we're going to look at the reproduction or replacement cost of improvements. We're going to estimate accrued depreciation, subtract accrued depreciation from this value, and then we add the land to figure out the whole value of the property. I'm going to show you numbers in a second, how this works. So estimating the land value is estimating the land to be vacant, unimproved. Okay? To figure out the reproduction or replacement cost, We have 4 different ways to figure this out. The most common, the square foot method. Okay, so the square foot method is based on our expertise and known strategies to build or construct in the area, right? We can look, and most people do this nowadays, we can look at, hey, I have 1,000 square feet right here. For you to build this room, to build out, it costs roughly $20 a square foot. So if I have 1,000, how much does it cost to build this room? $20,000. Does that make sense? So if we put the whole building, how much does it cost to create this building, to reproduce or replace the building? Is it going to cost, based on square footage, let's say 10,000 square feet, again at $20 a square foot, so 20 times 10,000, that will be your answer to build, as an example. Right, so the square foot method is based on what we expect, again, based on our expertise and based on what we see that something was built recently, what it would be. The next one is the unit in place method. See here, we're using the material cost manuals and estimate labor and overhead, right? And the builder's profit and all that stuff. So we're going to add stuff, units in place, every little item. And then we have also quantity survey, and we have the index method, so based on inflation, for instance. All right, so these are not as common. The first two, the square foot and the unit in place method, are the most common. We're going to estimate how long this property is going to live for, right? Let's say, for instance, if I have a 30-year roof, right? I just installed it, brand new, 30-year roof. What does that mean to me? It means that the roof is supposed to last 30 years. You got it? Simple. How much did it cost? It cost me $10,000 to put the roof. So 10,000 divided by 30 years, that's how much I lose every year in value. You guys got it? That's the economic age life method, for instance. All right, and here come the numbers. So let's say we figure out, by comparing land to land, we found vacant lots and how much they were worth, 25 by 100, right? And we found the vacant lot 25 by 100, and they're worth $80,000, land by itself, individually, right? Then we're going to look at the improvements. The main building by one of the 4 methods, traditionally the square foot method, the main building costs $260,000 to build. We have other structures here in this building, for some reason, like a garage maybe, so that's $16,000. That means that the cost to build new is $276,000. So for me to rebuild this house, $276,000. We're going to apply depreciation. What is depreciation? Again, loss of value over time. Things lose value over time. So it could be physical, it could be functional, or external. In this case, we don't have external, right? But we have $10,000 worth of physical, curable depreciation, things we can do to the property. And we have an estimate of $14,000 loss of value of something we can't do, we cannot fix. Like we cannot air condition the building. How much does that detract from the value? It's incurable. So $14,000 loss. Functional, whatever, like the intercoms. It costs $6,000 to change the intercoms that Jen was talking about. So the total loss in value, total depreciation, is $30,000. That's the total depreciation. So now what we do, step number 4, is the improvements minus depreciation. So brand new, $276,000. Current depreciation, $30,000. That means the depreciated value is $246,000. Okay. Final step, step number 5. We add land to this value that we found. This is the value of the building, $246,000. Now, what's the value of the property? Right? And a lot of people make a mistake, so let me address that. Property is the land and whatever's on it. Okay? What is the value of the property? Not the house. What is the value of the property? Well, land by itself is $80,000. Because he has an existing structure on top, it's an additional $246,000. So the value of this property that we're trying to sell is $326,000. Right? So in the state exam, if they ask you anything about this, if they do, cost approach, they'll give you the majority of these numbers and simplify it. It's not that complicated. As you see, it's only step one. It'll give you land by itself. It will say land value is $80,000, right? Assuming that based on the square foot method, it costs $260, or they'll tell you that the cost is $20 per square foot in a building that has 1,200 square feet, for instance, let's say. How much would it cost to build, or what is the true value? So they'll give you all the numbers. You just got to remember these steps. It's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps. So land separately. We're going to look at the improvements, how much they cost. We're going to figure out depreciation. We deduct the improvements. From the improvements, we deduct the depreciation. And then we add the land value. That's it. Only 5 steps. If you guys go through this illustration, that's one of the things I like about this book. Their illustrations are on point, very simple, very easy to understand. But go through it a couple times if needed. And if you guys have any questions, ask now. Before I get into income capitalization approach. Take a second to ask questions if you haven't. For people watching on YouTube, if you have questions, trying cost approach now, consumers. Like completely unrelated, but sure. Celine's asking, are you going to do another math class? Yes. This morning class is over. I did the evening class. Yesterday I did math. The next math class will be... I'll tell you right now. Around, I think it's on the Christmas day. Around there. Next math class, right now it's scheduled for the 16th. Yep. So 2 weeks from now. You want another example of what? Of cost approach? Okay. Parking lot, do we use a sales approach? Hold on. If it's a parking lot, do you use a sales approach? Is there income? And how many sales of land are you going to find? So you have to figure out what type of property it is. We're going to go over income approach after this. Sam, do you have yesterday's math class on YouTube? Yeah, just search for yesterday's stream. I have not taken those down yet, so you can search for yesterday's stream. Now, as far as this right here, Zeline, what I was trying to show you is that they give you all the info. Literally, all you have to do is remember the steps. For the cost approach is that easy. They'll give you everything else. So, step number 1, land value. How do we get land value? The question will tell you land is worth this much, right? I'm not going to do another example of this because you have a question at the end of this chapter. So if you go to the student portal, there's a question there. I want you to try it and then ask me questions, right? But we have here the cost approach. Land is always calculated separately. And there might be a question, which of the 3 approaches the value, or which of the approaches to value calculates the land separately. Well, cost approach does. So they'll tell you land is worth $80,000, right? The building, right? The improvement, the building is worth $260,000. So they'll give you all this info. You just got to know that once you have land, you put it separate right away, and then you go from here on. Okay? So they'll tell you 260 with a depreciated value of $30,000, let's say. So you won't even have to figure all this out. They'll give you $30,000. So now you know that you have to do this one minus this one. That's step number 4. So simplifying it, this is what it is. So step number 4 is figuring out the difference between these two, which is 246. And the final step, step number 5, is you add this value to the land. It's as simple as this, I'm telling you. They'll tell you $80,000 is the land value. The building is worth 246, or the construction cost, or whatever, 260, I'm sorry, with I'm sorry, 276, and a depreciated value of $30,000. So you got to remember, depreciation is minus. Okay, depreciation is always something that's a loss, something minus. So if they gave you the value of the building new, and they give you depreciation, you have to minus it. That's what you need to remember. So now that you got the actual value of the property, add the land, boom. That's the indicative value based on the cost approach. Got it? Perfect. But there's a question on the student portal, in the student portal under this chapter. There's a question there, so make sure you try that one out and then ask me questions you might have. Okay? So, income capitalization approach. Before I get into this, there is, if you go on the YouTube channel, so I'm just letting you know, if there's anything that's confusing here now, you can always ask questions, obviously. But if you go on my YouTube channel, there's an income approach video. So literally you can search income approach or income capitalization approach under New Direction School. And there's a video that explains step by step. There's like 3 different examples that I explained there as if it was a state exam, right? Or the school exam. There's 3 different examples you can go through. So whatever you don't get here, right? And you're afraid to ask or whatever it might be, go watch that video. It's a lot more detailed than what we go over here. Okay. So the steps for the income capitalization approach. First of all, why would we use income capitalization approach? Well, easy. Because a property produces income, rental income, right? Vending machines income, right? Concessions income. So sales concessions. Anything that's income could go into the income approach. Okay, very simple. So what we determine is that the money that a property brings determines its value. That's what we're saying. So the more money it brings, the more it's worth. Common sense, right? So the approach is based on the principle of anticipation. The expected future income stream of a property underlies what an investor will pay for the property. Okay? So we expect whatever money is supposed to come in determines the value of this property. So the income capitalization approach is limited in 2 ways. First, it is difficult to determine an appropriate capitalization rate, which I'll explain in a second. And this is often a matter of judgment and experience on the part of the appraiser. Second, the income approach relies on market information about income and expenses on other properties, right? And it could be difficult to find such info, right? Because for us to determine the income approach, I need to go and see property A, B, C, and D and see how much they sold for and how much money they brought in, how much income they had. So we can create an actual value here. So these are the steps in the income approach. Very simple also, except when you get to the math. A little bit more complicated than the cost approach. But the steps are 5, okay? The first step is estimate potential gross income. This is assuming 100% occupancy. So you estimate the potential gross income is assuming 100% occupancy. But then we need to figure out what's the effective gross income. How do we figure that out? Well, we need to deduct minus vacancy and losses. We're going to go over all this in a second. So vacancy and losses, because look, if I have 100 units, are all 100 units going to be 100% occupied 100% of the time? Or is there a possibility that a tenant moves out? Right? There is a possibility. So it's going to be empty. How long is it going to be empty? I have no idea. But there is a possibility. Right? What about the possibility of a tenant not paying? I mean, it's 2020. If you're a landlord, you know the possibility of a tenant not paying. Right? So we have losses, collection losses, rent collection losses. So we have to deduct that to figure out what's the effective gross income. And then we estimate the number that we actually need, which is the NOI. NOI, that's net operating income. And we figured it out by deducting the expenses. At this point, we're going to select a capitalization rate, which I'll explain better in a little bit. And we apply the capitalization rate to our property. We'll figure out the value. Okay? So, potential gross income. It's the scheduled rent. Scheduled rent. So, again, 100%. Plus other income, like, let's say, the coin laundry machine, as an example. So other income we're adding, and that will reach the potential gross income, which again is 100% occupied, fully performing, and all that stuff, right? Now, the next thing we have is to reach the effective gross income. Again, we have the 100% minus the estimate. Let's say in the area, the type of property that it is, we're going to estimate a 5% loss. So minus 5%. That means the effective gross income, which is what we can expect to receive from the property, is 95%. Okay? So if the property was 100% occupied, as an example, and it brought $100,000, how much can I count on? In this example, $95,000 is the max that I would count on to come in from this property. This is not what comes to my pocket, right? Yet, because there's expenses. But this is what I can expect if it was 100% occupied. I can expect some people will leave, some people will not pay, roughly 5% of it. Okay? It could be 10, it could be 20, depending on what type of business you're in. Hotels, motels, they expect anywhere between 30 to 40% vacancy throughout the year. In certain times of the year, they go to 20% vacancy or even 10% vacancy. But the majority of the times, if a hotel says they're fully booked, they're not. Right? They're never fully booked. They have high vacancy. Hotel is one of those businesses with high vacancy rate. Right? But anyway, hotels, motels, and so on. So what can I expect? If you're running a business, and that's what it should be, an income property, it should be a business. If you're running a business, I can expect 95%, let me forget this, set it and forget it. If I get more, great. If I get less, hey, we're ready for that. You guys understand? So 95% in this example is the effective gross income. But again, that's not what I take home. What I take home, and look, this is in green, what I take home is the net operating income, right? And the net operating income is that 95%, right? Actually, let's translate this to numbers. Let's say it's $95,000, right? That's 95% of what we said earlier, $100,000, right? Minus expenses, and the expenses were $30,000. So how much do I bring every year? right? The difference is, hold on, I'm not very good at math. Anybody can help me? 95 minus 30? I'm not good at math. I'm just horrible at it. Can anybody help me here, please? Beg you, help me. I don't know what that is. I see hands. I'm not very good with sign language either. I don't know what that means. That's why I cannot go to a baseball game, right? I don't understand those things. All right, guys. Thank you. I appreciate it. I just want to make sure you guys were there. All right. So this is what we call, and this is the most important number we need, it's called NOI. This is the most important number, NOI. For you to calculate the income approach, you have to have the NOI. Okay? Let's recap. What's NOI? It's potential gross income minus vacancy minus expenses. That's the NOI. That's the number we need. Okay? Now, what are these expenses? The expenses is the cost of operating, the cost of operation, so the cost of keeping the lights on, right? So we're talking about utilities, we're talking about employees, we're talking about taxes, right? But we are not talking about debt. Why? Because the cost of operation is usually the same for everyone. But debt is different. I might have a mortgage, you might not have a mortgage. I might have a mortgage at 6%, you might have a mortgage at 20%, as an example, right? So that's a big variable where taxes, they stay, insurance, they stay, right? Utilities, they stay. They're pretty much the same. Can we make a few adjustments here and there to maximize the income? Sure. But on average, those are the expenses. So be ready for it. Debt is never included. Okay? Never included. So mortgage or any other financing against the building is never included in these calculations. Okay? All right. Next, capitalization rate. Now, what is capitalization rate? Capitalization rate is the ROR, which is rate of return. Has anybody ever heard of ROR? No? Okay, a few people. All right, cool. So ROR is the ROR. It's the rate of return. There's different ways to calculate value for real estate. There's a cash on cash. There's the cash on equity, and there's a ROR or cap rate of return. Now, the capitalization rate is an estimate of the rate of return that an investor will demand on the investment of capital in a property such as the subject property. The judgment and market knowledge of the appraiser play an essential role in the selection of the appropriate rate for the subject property. In most cases, the appraiser will research capitalization rates used on similar properties in the market. We're going to apply the cap rate. Again, in the state exam, they'll give you that information. As far as cap rate goes, unless you're getting into commercial properties, I wouldn't be too concerned about cap rates in the beginning. Unless you're getting into commercial properties. The first recommendation I give you guys is always to go residential. They're the easiest sales to make. There's a high turnover, so it's easy to get your feet wet when it comes to this business. Commercial, there's two types of cap rate. There's the entrance and the exit cap rate. At the time of purchase and at the time of sale. There's two different types of cap rates. So I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible for you to pass the exam, right? And then everything else will go with experience. So in the exam, they'll give you the cap rate, or they'll ask you what is the cap rate by giving you the rest of the information. So cap rate, we will apply to the income to figure out value. And the formula, right? And don't stress about formulas. In a math class, I'll remove all the formulas. Right? I have one simple tool, removes all the formulas. So, but the formula is NOI divided by cap rate equals value. NOI, which is net operating income, divided by cap rate equals value. And by the way, this is annual NOI. So we always deal with annual NOI. If they ever give you a monthly NOI, you need to multiply by 12, because to do this calculation is based on annual NOI. So the formula is IRV formula, which is income divided by rate equals value. And there's variations of the formula, which is value times rate equals income, or income divided by value equals rate. So here's the illustration. Ready? All right, here I need you guys to pay attention. The steps are very similar to the cost approach, right? In that there's only very few steps, right? But I need you to really pay attention here. If there's a question in the state exam regarding approaches, it's going to be income approach. For the cost approach, they'll ask you most likely which one of these calculates land separate from the building. That's the cost approach. But I can almost guarantee there's a question regarding income capitalization approach in the state exam. Okay? So, step number one, we're going to estimate the potential gross income. How do we figure that out, guys? Well, 100% occupied. So in this property, they're telling us that if it's 100% occupied, it brings $192,000. We have other income. Let's say, again, the coin operated the laundromat over the year gives us an additional $2,000. That means that your potential gross income, giving all considerations, is $194,000. That's your estimated 100% occupancy and profit, right? That's step number two. We're going to figure out the effective gross income. Again, guys, they'll give you most of this information in the exam. So they'll tell you, well, it's worth 194, right? And we can expect 5% loss, or in this case, they gave you 9,600 as the loss. So they'll either give you a 5% loss, or they'll give you an actual number to work with. So step number two is to deduct the losses to reach the effective gross income. So the EGI is 184,400. That's the EGI, effective gross income. Once you reach the EGI, effective gross income, which is what we can expect to bring every year, now we're going to look at the constant operating expenses. We're going to look at the stuff that we have to deal with. By the way, state exam, they'll give you this value. They will not give you all this. State exam, they'll give you this value. They'll tell you $84,000. But look at the expenses. It's taxes, insurance, utilities, repairs, maintenance, management, reserves, and accounting and legal stuff. So an attorney, right? So these are all the expenses that cost the operations of the business. So now that we figured that out, it's 184 effective gross income, and we deduct the expenses. How much do we bring in? What is our NOI? 100,400, right? 100,400. That's the net. That's what we bring home. So think about this as your gross pay right here. This is what you wish you'd bring home, so your salary, right? And then they start deducting Social Security, disability, unemployment, whatever fee, like why are you here fee, don't bother us fee. They start deducting a bunch of stuff, and then comes what you take home, almost half in this case, right? So $100,000. Now we're going to select the capitalization rate, and guys, the cap rate is determined by comparables, other properties, similar situation. We'll go over that at a different time. But here, just like in the state exam, they'll give you this. Or they'll give you the value in the NOI for you to figure out the rate. But in this scenario, they said cap rate is 7%. So the way we figure this out is simple. It's the IRV formula. The IRV formula is income, NOI, okay, divided by cap rate, which is that 7% cap, right? So income divided by cap rate equals value. So this is the value. So a property, guys, in this area, a property that brings $100,000 every year, clean, $100,000 every year, is worth 1.4 million. Okay, that's a calculation. A property that brings $100,000 net is worth 1.4 million if we assume a cap rate of 7%. Any questions here? Again, very similar to the previous one, the cost approach. It's very few steps. Got to remember, 100% occupied minus vacancy, because there's people that leave, right? There's people that don't pay, and then we take the expenses out, right? And they'll give you all these numbers. They give you the final numbers. Again, let me show you. They will give you this number in the state exam. They will give you this number, which is the effect, or I'm sorry, the losses, rent collection losses, vacancy, and so on. And they'll give you the total expenses. So they'll give you all this. It's just a matter of you knowing, again, 100% minus vacancy, minus expenses, NOI. Once you get the NOI, they'll give you the cap rate for you to figure out the value. Or they'll give you income and they'll give you value to figure out cap rates. Or they'll give you value and they'll give you cap rate to figure out income. But they'll give you all these numbers, right? So you just got to know the variations of the formula. And here's the good news. Once we get to chapter, the math chapter, right? I have one thing, one tool that will remove this formula. You don't have to remember income divided by rate equals value, or that value times rate equals income. Right? You don't have to remember none of that. You just have to know how to fill in the blanks. As simple as that. Marta, did I give you a headache? Okay, you're like, Yana says yes. Me, yes, I got it. All right, Celine as well. All right, cool. Being effective. There you go. All right. With that being said, there's more to this. Celine even went like, okay. I have good news after we're done with this right here. It's almost there. I have great news for you guys, right? So you're going to be happy. You're going to be able to relax a little bit. So gross rent multiplier. Okay, hold on. So Jen says, guys, for the math, you need to know bachata. You'll understand when you get there. Yesterday I was teaching the bachata. Yes. Simple. We also talked about merengue. We'll talk about salsa and a bunch of other stuff. Anyway, so Gianna says, I didn't understand. And Sine says, I have to do this 20 times. 21 to make sure, okay? So, Gianna, what did you not understand? Let me go here. Can you tell me where did you get lost? Down? Down, 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 down. Isn't there a song like that? Right here. Right here? You got lost? Okay. You got lost with the formula? Did you get lost with the cap rate or the NOI? Formula? Hold on. I'm trying to figure out what you're saying. All right, 4 people on YouTube. You guys don't have any questions? We're live, so take advantage. Meanwhile, I'm waiting on Diana to explain her quiz. And watch this. She's going to ask a question and everybody's going to be like, yeah, that's my question. It's like that. Rose is good so far. Great. All right. Zeline is asking, how did you find out the EGI under... Okay. So in the question, in the state exam question, they'll tell you that the losses, for instance, could be 5%, or in this case, they gave you the 9,600. Okay? So they gave you a value. The EGI is what we would potentially bring minus that loss. So they will give you this number. How do we get to the 9,600? They either give you this number or they give you the percentage. You have to figure it out. Okay? But that's it. You deduct it and it gives you 184. Diana says the whole division part. This. So this is the same as this. You're telling me to move, but it's the same thing. So this is the formula. This is the formula. It's income divided by rate equals value. So we did figure out, hold on. We did figure out that from here, we figure out the NOI was 100,000. So that's income, net operating income, right? And they told us that the cap rate is 7%, which is also 0.07. And I'll explain this better when we get to the math chapter. This is the bachata thing that Jen is talking about, right? So this is the same as 0.07. So when you put the numbers into the formula, income, rate. So 100,000 divided by 7%. And the property is worth 1.4. That's not what you get? Okay. Let me see what's happening with that calculator. That's why you don't get it. Okay. So 100,000. I'm sorry, 100,400. Divided by 0.07. Not the number you get? You need to get a functional calculator. All right. Let me see if I got what you did put there. Nope. That's not it. So 100,000. That's it. Yeah, you forgot the percent. Okay, let's do what she did, but now let's add divided by 7%. Forgot to hit the percent key. All right, so you're good now? All right, great, guys. Okay, I'm looking at some faces saying, please help me. All right. Ask questions. What is the issue? I told you I needed your full attention here to this section of the chapter. So what is the issue? Ask questions. Okay, Tiana, her issue was the calculator and how to operate one. All right. Nate got it. Okay, Nate, so you're good? Yeah. Okay, Sam? Good, Ophelia? Okay, all right. So no issues. Cool. So let me complicate your lives. There's another one, another formula. There's the gross rent and the gross income multiplier, the GRM and the GIM. GRM and the GIM. Now, either one of these, one of the things you have to remember is that it says multiplier. So it kind of like already gives you a hint of what you have to do if you have this number. Right? The multiplier. So what do? Multiply. Now, what is the GRM? So the GRM and the GIM approaches are simplified income-based methods used primarily for properties that produce or might produce income, but they're not primarily income properties, like a single family. Okay? A single family is not traditionally used for income property. But if I rent one, then it's a rental income, even if it's a single family. Okay? There's not going to be many comparables, so I can have a single family here that's for rent, right? So that's one fam, and it's a rental. But most of the other properties around are owner-occupied. So if they're owner-occupied, how am I going to figure out the value? That's what makes it difficult. That's why we use the GRM or the GIM. See, the method consists of applying a multiplier to the estimated gross income or gross rent of the subject property. The multiplier is derived from market data on the sales prices and the gross rent of those particular properties. The advantage of the income multiplier is that it offers a relatively quick indication of value using an informal methodology. However, the approach leaves many variables out of consideration, such as vacancy, credit losses, operating expenses, right? Because it's the gross rent is not the net. So we're using your salary, your gross salary versus your net salary, okay? In addition, the appraiser must have market rental data to establish these multipliers. So steps in the gross rent multiplier approach. There are two steps in the gross rent multiplier approach. First, select the gross rent multiplier by examining the sales price and monthly rents of comparable properties which have sold recently. The appraiser's judgment and market knowledge are critical in determining the appropriate rent multiplier for the subject. The gross rent multiplier for a property is the price, so what is sold for, it's a sales price, okay, divided by the gross monthly rent, and it gives you the GRM. That's the simple formula, okay? It's sales divided by gross rent equals GRM. Once we figure out the GRM in the area, this is step number 2. Once we figure out the GRM in the area, we're going to multiply by our rent to give you the estimated value. Okay, so it's very similar to the income capitalization approach where we have, the NOI approach, where we have a cap rate. It's just that here we have the GRM. So let's look at this illustration real quick. Rose, yeah, this is monthly, right? So the gross rent multiplier, in this scenario, this is the property we're trying to sell, subject property, and we have 4 properties to compare to. So this one, $500,000, monthly rent of $1,600. The GRM is $151. Property B, $248,000, $1,500. The GRM is $165. Property C, $324 is what is sold for, divided by the monthly rent. The GRM is $147, and so on. Once we figure out at least 4 properties to compare to, and look, it doesn't have to be all single family, because again, there's not many single families for rent in the area. So, but we're going to have to be as close to it as possible. What we need to do is this: figure out what's the gross rent multiplier in the area. And in the area, we figure out that the average of all of these is 160. That's the average GRM. Okay? And to address this is very simple. I don't know where you guys live, but have you noticed that the rental rates are very similar from one property to the other? If it's a 2-bedroom, let's say $1,500, next door, a 2-bedroom is more or less $1,500, right? 2 houses down, more or less $1,500. If you're in the Ironbound section here in Newark, it's $2,000, right? That's the average, $2,000 for the 2-bedroom. For a 3-bedroom, forget it, right? So that means that we're going to look at the sales price of a property, divide by the rent, and it gives us what the average GRM is in the area. So 160. I'm going to now multiply the 160 by the gross rent, right? By the gross rent that I receive every month. So 160 GRM multiplier, multiply by our gross rent, and our property is worth $320,000. So how much can I list this property for? $320,000. So again, based on comparables, we're going to figure out the GRM and we apply it right. Questions? I'm sorry, you got out. That's your fault. I'm done. Ghana's like, hey, I got kicked out. I gave you guys 15-minute break. Nobody told you to leave. Rose, how do you arrive at the 160? It's the average of these. So if you add them all and divide by 4, because it's 4 comparables, it should give you 160 more or less. But again, in the state exam, let me make your lives easier. In the state exam, they will give you the gross rent. They will give you the, well, I know there's it's a little off there, but it's 160 for this example. In the state exam, they will give you the information. So they'll give you the property grosses. So they'll set you up. They tell you property grosses 500,000. The net is 300 something thousand. Operating expenses are whatever. So they put you a bunch of information that for the GRM is not needed. You have to learn how to eliminate all that information. And you only need the gross rent and whatever they're going to give you here. The gross rent and the GRM. You apply that, it gives you the value that they're looking for. Simple. Okay. And by the way, Rose, yeah, I know this is, unfortunately, the publisher did this wrong. Nothing I can do. But for instance, if you divide these, it's not 151 either. At least I think this is the one that's off. Yep. 301. And the publisher put here 151. So it's a little off. It's they I don't know what number there was. I think this is probably supposed to be a 3 or something, or a 4 maybe. I don't know. But it's a little off. So the point was the same. The fact that you have to look at sales price, see what rent they bring. You divide the sales price by the rent, and it should give you a GRM. So yeah, this number is a little off. This number is way off. Can't do much about that. Right? Anyway. Any questions? 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 All right, so the next thing we have, the GIM is calculated the same way as the GRM, so I'm going to skip that. Next thing we have, and we are done, is if you want to become an appraiser, these are the steps you have to go through. I don't go through this at all because it's not in the state exam. I haven't had one question regarding how to become an appraiser state exam, but if you're interested in becoming one, the steps are all here. Follow through. That is it. Questions? Once? Twice? Pages, so I'm not sure if the question is coming or not. All right, cool. So if there's no questions, guys, we're done for today. I have, I told you I was going to make you happy, right? So I have an announcement, which is, I had to write this down because I did not explain yesterday, which is tomorrow there is no class. You have a day off. All right. Some people are like, yay, you get to study chapter 16. That's your 4 hours. Study. That's it. Okay? So the reason why we don't have class tomorrow, there's a mandatory instructor, so State of New Jersey mandatory instructor meeting. So hopefully I'll find out news about the in-class and the online, if this is going to stay, if this is going to be canceled forever. I don't know what's going to happen. But I guess tomorrow we're going to find out the next steps for real estate in New Jersey. All right? So that being said, no class tomorrow. I know some of you are sad. Some of you are extremely happy. But still treat it as if you were in class. Take the 4 hours there you're going to be free to go over this stuff and ask any questions you have. I'm going to be in a meeting, but I can answer those questions, okay? Is that a deal? Great, guys. Jen, you're definitely fired. Why would you say yay to no class tomorrow? You have an exam on Friday. Anyway. All right, guys. So that's it. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Have an amazing day tomorrow, and I'll see you on Thursday at 10 o'clock in the morning. If you have questions, reach out to me at any time. Anytime. All right? I might not answer right away, but I'll get back to you. Thank you, guys. Have a good one.